Thank God my wife's not here. And I'll ask you not to tell her what I said. Every time I teach about marriage, I just get into a lot of trouble. So it's as much for me as for anybody else. Also, I hope that this wisdom will make a difference for you. Not only we all need a refresher, but God willing to teach our children and God willing to teach our grandchildren. Next week I'm going to Lakewood. My oldest son, Penny, is making a bar mitzvah. My oldest Anikel, just yesterday he was born. It's not that long before the grandchildren will be under the chuppah. So perhaps this is chachma, this is wisdom that can make a difference for generations to come. The title is Fail-Safe Wisdom for an Extraordinary Marriage. Now, of course, you have to start off with jokes on marriage, right? We have to do that. So I'll be an equal opportunity joke teller, 2 for the men, 2 for the women. So we'll start off for the men. A little girl attends a wedding for the first time in her life, and she is mesmerized. And she sees the bride, and she whispers to her mother, "Why is the bride dressed in white?" So the mother says, "Because white is the color of happiness, and today is the happiest day of her life." So the little girl scratches her head and says, "So why is the groom wearing black?" That's for the men. For the women, a woman inserted an ad in the classifieds. This is obviously an old joke. I don't know the online stuff, but you can translate it to whatever online site it would be on. Husband wanted. Next day, she receives 100 responses, all the same. You can have mine. All right. All right, we'll do again for the women. The mayor of a southern town is with his wife, and she sees the garbage man. She's with her mayor husband, and she sees the garbage man and says, "Hello, Bill." Her husband looks at her and says, "Honey, it's not election time. It's not fitting for you to say hello." She says, "But honey bun, he's an old high school chum." He says, "See, if you'd married him, you'd be the wife of a garbage man." She says, "No, he'd be the mayor." And finally, for the men, a wife is making breakfast of fried eggs for her husband. Suddenly, her husband bursts into the kitchen. "Careful, careful, put on more butter. Oh my gosh, you're cooking too many at once, too many. Turn them over now, turn them over. Salt, you need salt. Use the salt, use the salt." The wife looks at him and says, "Are you crazy? You don't think I know how to cook fried eggs?" He says very calmly, "I just wanted to show you what it feels like when I'm driving with you in the car." I mean, all these jokes about marriage, it's all about how painful it is, and it's all about how the men are crazy and the women, well, we can't figure them out and all that, and it's such a pain. But you know, Chazal, our Torah, when you really go through its chachma, you see that they don't want us just to have a good marriage. They want us to have an extraordinary marriage. And that's available to us. The only thing is we've got to be ready to put in the positive effort every single day. There is no fast routes. There's no escapes. That's the way it has to be. Chazal can give us the greatest of wisdoms. If we're not ready to apply it and put in the positive effort, it'll be a tremendously lost opportunity. Now, I have a certain amount of time. It's Canada Day. Obviously, it would take hours and hours to go through everything that I'd like to go through. But I want to pick out 3 areas. We'll see how far we can get. And I'm not sure how much these areas are spoken about. So let's get right into it. There's an outline for you. And number 1 is recommitting to our obligations to our spouse. Recommitting today, Canada Day. Oh, Canada, we owe our marriage to recommit to the obligations that we undertook under the chuppah. Obligations can be extraordinarily positive. You know, if you take a look at the pasuk of Lo sisla es achicha, you should not hate. What is the next phrase? Hochiach tochiach es amisecha. You should reprove your friend. In other words, the Torah is written for good people. And when we hate, when good people hate, it's because injustice has been done to us. A wrong has been done to us. So the Torah comes and says, you're not allowed to hate. But what do you mean I'm not allowed to hate? The injustice, what this person just did to me behind my back, how can I not hate? Well, when we undertake the obligation of not to hate, it forces us to figure out how to do that. It forces us to figure out what is the internal attitudes I need to have. Well, why am I hating so much? I want justice. Well, maybe I shouldn't be playing God. That's true. I shouldn't do that. But why am I reacting so heatedly? Well, it's because maybe my self-esteem isn't what it should be. And if I'm not respected by everyone, I just overreact. And all of a sudden, the obligation not to hate forces me to grow and to find the attitudes that helps me keep my dignity and my vitality. When we undertake obligations, beautiful things happen. Can you imagine someone saying, I can't take my kids anymore. Decided not to love them. I've decided to ignore them. I mean, no one says that because we know we're obligated to love our children. And because we're obligated to love our children, we do whatever it takes to make it work. Well, Torah, Chazal teach us that the most important relationship in our lives is not with our children, it's with our spouse. The same obligation that keeps me going with my children, that is the motor and the engine of why I'll do anything for them, it has to be even more so with our spouse. That was the obligation that we undertook under the chuppah. I'll tell you a beautiful story. It's not in any of the books, but I heard it from the person who witnessed it, from the great Rabbi Ahron Hoch of Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha. One of the great activists in the world today, even if you may not know the name, is Professor Dr. Marvin Schick, who at 19 years old became Rav Aaron Zatzal's right-hand man. They had to go to a Torah Masorah convention, and there was a very important meeting for the Kollel happening at a certain time. And it was Erev Shabbos. Marvin brings the driver to pick up Rav Aaron Zatzal, and they're driving for 15 minutes. They come to a toll booth, and Rav Aaron says, we got to go back. I forgot to say Good Shabbos to the Rebbitzin. Marvin says, but Rebbe, we're going to be late. This meeting is critical. He said, no. He insisted that they have to go back. If I leave without saying Good Shabbos to her, she's going to feel like she's secondary. And they went back. They went back. Men, before you went to Badek your Kala, you made a kinyan on the ksuba. And in that kinyan you said, Va'ana afalach, I will work for you. Ve'ekar, which is translated as I will respect you. Ve'ezon, I will take responsibility to make sure your economic well-being, your food is taken care of. But you know, the word ekar comes from the word yakar, which not only means to respect, but means precious. We men undertook the ekar. I will treat you preciously. You will be precious to me. And it's an amazing thing when we undertake as husbands that obligation to be outward focused, to focus in on them for altruistic reasons. Do you know what the byproduct is? I always tell people, one of the psychological and emotional wonders of creation, it's like coming to the Niagara Falls, is the loyalty of a wife to her husband. It is beyond. It's incredible. When a wife feels loved and respected, she will do anything for her man. It's one of the wonders of creation. We obligated to ourselves to ve'ekar, to treat her preciously. And when I say obligation, it's not just the ksuva. When you take a look in the Rambam, Hilchas Ishas, Perek Tesvav, Halacha Yates, V'chein tzivu chachamim. Our chachamim commanded us, Sheyehe Adam Mechaber es Ishto Yoser Migufo, that a person honors his wife more so than himself, V'oava kegufo, and love her more than himself, like himself. I'll never forget, in a couple of months, Faggy and I will be celebrating our 38th wedding anniversary. Can I get a hand, please? Thank you. Okay. I'm still happy she's not here. It's like yesterday. My father is the sweetest person. And the way he parented us was with sweetness and just by who he was. I will never forget, right before we went down to the chuppah, walking down to the chuppah, he looks at me and in a no-nonsense way says, you take good care of her. I hope that this will ring in every single person's head from here on in. You take good care of her. V'chein tzivu chachamim. That's what we undertook in the ksuba. Va'ano afalach, ve'ekor, ve'ezen yisichi lechi. Kehilchis guvrin Yehudon. Like Jews do, like Jewish men do. And to the wives, we men, we need to be admired. We need to be believed in. If you as wives undertake that obligation to admire, to encourage him, to create the spiritual and moral vision for the family, if you believe in him, he will go through walls for you. So that's step number one, is just recommitting to our obligations that we undertook under the chuppah. Number two, not spoken about enough, is to infuse deep meaning into your marriage and family. I forgot a chumash. Is there a chumash available? Is there a chumash available? In the story of Yitzchak and Rivka, I remember seeing this clearly articulated in an article in a now defunct magazine, Jewish Observer, in the 80s by Rabbi Dr. Gottlieb Shlita, where he so beautifully went through the pasuk that teaches us the second classic definition of marriage. The first one is from Adam and Chava. But in the story, Eliezer is bringing back Rivka, and she sees Yitzchak, who's out lasuach basada. Lasuach is a lashon of tefillah. And she sees him. And as we say, b'lashon laz, she is blown away by his ruchnius. And the pasuk says, Vatipol me'al hagamal, which the Netziv translates literally. She fell off her camel. See, in Mashiach's time, that's the types of movies that Hollywood will be showing. That the husband, the future husband, was so great, ruchnius-wise, that she just fell off her camel. And she covers herself modestly. And what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, "Vayivieho Yitzchak ha'ohela Sarah imo," that Yitzchak brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. And then a couple of words later says, "Vaye'ehavoha," he loved her. And we all know the famous concept. Sarah's tent was not an address. It wasn't my old address, I think was 537 Spring Gate. That's not what Yitzchak brought her into. He brought her into the Shekhinah of Sarah. The Shekhinah, Sarah brought down the Shekhinah into this world. In other words, that Yitzchak and Rivka go into the world of common, meaningful goals. And it's from there that the love came. It was there that the love came. The definition here is that marriage is a man and a woman coming together to pursue common, meaningful goals. Again, a man and a woman coming together to pursue common, meaningful goals. Now, years ago, I had to figure out, how do you make this real to people? And then finally, the perfect situation came. And it's a problem because people are now getting younger. They don't remember this. But you see, you have relationships based on virtue. How does that work? Meets her. She is so funny and so good and so kind. And she likes that he's got drive, he's got this, he's got that, sees the virtue, and we're in love. Well, if the relationship will be solely based on virtue, how does it grow? How does that relationship grow? What we're looking for is a relationship where I can be confident that 10 years down the road, our love and connection will be that much deeper. And that comes from the relationship that comes from the pursuit of common meaningful goals. So what was the example found in the early 90s? Well, I'm a big believer that when we raise our children, we must find positive, healthy outlets for them. Yadas cannot be one where they feel repressed. You must find positive, healthy outlets. My first house in Clanton Park was off a park, was always playing ball with them. There would be the pickup games. All the kids from the neighborhood would come. If we would have charged for the washroom, we could have made a lot of money in those days. And of course, they became sports fans. A lot of Rosh Yeshiva is famous for knowing every batting average by heart. So it was 93, the second year of the World Series, where Toronto makes it into the World Series. And people have told me who were in the stands what happened. The bottom of the ninth, Joe Carter comes up, hits the World Series winning home run. Touch 'em all, Joe. Touch 'em all, Joe. People told me that people were hugging each other in the stands. And it was beautiful. They spilled out onto Yonge Street. In those days, you didn't riot when your team won. And people are hugging and high-fiving. Can you imagine a guy's walking 3 weeks later, someone comes over him on Yonge Street and hugs him. Say, who are you? So, what, don't you remember? We hugged each other in the stadium 3 weeks ago. You call the cops on him. But think about it. What happened? Why 3 weeks ago in the stadium was it natural to hug a stranger? Because at that moment, 50,000 people were united by a common goal. So powerful of a bond that hugging was natural. But because baseball is just a game and the goal is finished, 3 weeks later is very strange. But meaningful goals, ongoing meaningful goals, that's powerful. So you say, Rabbi, what are you talking about? So let's go to the part of Ava is a choice. Number 2, we love when we share common meaningful goals. Let me just quickly go through some of these points with you. Number 1, children and our close relationships. Again, we're on number 2 of Ava is a choice. Everyone have that? Yeah? 4 categories of common meaningful goals. I'm sure there are more, but these 4 are primary categories. Ladies, right at the Badekin, you were given a bracha. Achosenu at hayi la'alfei revava. Our sister, you should be the matriarch of tens of thousands. What happens if we stop saying to ourselves, we're a mother and a father, and start saying to ourselves, we're a matriarch and a patriarch? I'm not a mathematician. We have children. Who they have children. They have children. They have children. They have children. In 50 generations, I think we're talking in the thousands. More. Aseres Hadibros, the 10 utterances. 5 and 5. What's the 5th commandment? First 5 being Bein Adam L'Makom. What's the 5th commandment? Kibbut Avayim. So growing up, I used to tell my kids, you see, the Torah wants you to look at me like God. Which, of course, they just rolled their eyes. But that's the question. How do you call Bein Adam Kibbut Avayim Bein Adam L'Makom? The Ramban talks about it. The great Reb Shamshon Hirsch talks about it. You know what he says? Because the most important vehicle for the transmission of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah, the most important vehicle where we are going to change the world as Ar Lagoyim is what happens within the family. A new community starts. There's just enough money for a mikveh, a shul, or a yeshiva. The mikveh comes first. Says Rav Hirsch that the translation, the definition of parenting is being a transmitter of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's values. That's why it's Bein Adam L'Makom. Think about this. Think about the destiny of your family. That literally the world depends upon what you're going to make of these children, which will go a long way in determining what they make of their children. Dvarim ha'omdim berumo shel olam. And when a mother and a father become a team, when a father undertakes to make that spiritual, moral, Bein Adam L'Chavero, midos vision for the family, and the woman with her Bina Yisera says, what does that mean today? To bring that vision into a reality. And it's amazing. You know, newborn mothers and fathers, they walk into the supermarket, all the other parents have no control of their kids. My daughter-in-law wants to tell me she's in Lakewood, she's shopping, and we have my granddaughter, Kanina, she's just spunk. So that was a very spunky at 3. She's walking down the aisle, and my granddaughter just sticks out her hands by the cans. So these newborn parents, they come into the supermarket, the kid's 12 months old, they're watching all these parents with out-of-control children. They say, what idiots. They're such idiots. They can't, it's so easy. And then the kid turns 2. Oh, my gosh. And we start going with the parenting books and advice. And then you figure them out. And then they turn 6. And then you have to work together. And then you figure them out. And then, my gosh, they become teenagers. Oh, my gosh. And we got to make the adjustment. They want to be individuals, but they're still not mature enough. But a mother and a father that become a team. This is job number 1 for both of us. The bonding that happens. That's why you were wished when you became chassan v'kala, tiska, livnos, bayis, neman, umafor, b'yisrael. You can build something glorious. You can change the world. That's number 1. Number 2 is growth. Where you're out for each other's growth. First of all, pragmatically, we want to stay interesting to our spouse. We don't want to look the same. In bein adam la'atzmo, in bein adam la'chavero, in bein adam la'makom, to always look to grow and change and struggle. Each one to be the cheerleader for the other. But also, do we talk about ideas? Do we go out of our way to respect our wife's intellectual and emotional awareness, the intelligence? What do you think of this idea? When we prepare Divrei Torah for the Shabbos table, will she like it? Will she react to it? To help each other grow is another common meaningful goal. Number 3, the kahal, the community. We all stood under that chuppah where we had the tent of Sarah and Avraham. We can change the world by who we allow into our homes. Is there a person struggling that we can adopt? My brother and sister-in-law in Lakewood, a woman that never divorced, they adopted her decades ago, and her family. What a difference it made for those kids. Kiruv Rechokim. What one can do around their dining room table, Shabbos after Shabbos after Shabbos, one-on-one chavrusas during the week around our dining room table. And then there is what we do for the kahal outside of our home. As a team, one cheers on the other, one helps with strategizing, or together working on a particular project. And the last category is HaKadosh Baruch Hu and passionate Yahadus. It's amazing when you look at the Yomim Tovim, Shabbos and the Yomim Tovim, through the lens of this definition. Think about Pesach. First of all, how many Pesachim will we have as a family? 50? That's not a lot. Every Pesach is a tremendous opportunity. But what is it going to be? Is it going to be, let's get through it, the details, it's so hard, it's so this, it's so that? Or is it an event? The Torah comes at us and says to a husband and wife, this is the yesod of our emunah. This is the birth of Klal Yisrael. On this yontiv, you can understand what the destiny of Klal Yisrael is, what our relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is and to the world. And then as a team, perhaps one is the chef, the other is going to run the Seder. The one who's running the Seder puts in time. How am I going to make this Seder work? When my kids were teens, it was a lot more enjoyable for me. Intellectually, what are the points I want to give them? What do I want to say over to them? Do you know what my Seder looked like this year? I had so many Einaklach at the table, most from 8 on down. I came full circle. Can't start talking Torah. I was busy singing Pharaoh in pajamas in the middle of the night. Pharaoh in pajamas, and we're dancing out of Mitzrayim. But they're going to remember it. It'll be Tesaper Ba'oznei Bincha. What an opportunity. I don't have to enjoy it. Actually, I loved it. A Shabbos comes. Look at it through the lens where the Torah gives us the meaningful goal. And a lot of you remember the famous Helen Berman. Cooking is saying, I love you. Food changes the world. Comes a Pesach Seder. To this day, I remember my Bubba's, the smells of my Bubba's cooking. The table and the food is just as important in establishing the deep emotional love for the Yontif, for a Shabbos. 4 areas. And I'd like to ask you to do a little bit of homework. First of all, what are our own goals? What are our own goals? What are the meaningful goals in these areas? But then to work with your spouse. Renew those goals. This is fail-safe wisdom. The bonds that you create, the depth of relationship, the love that's created. Number 3, Ahava, love, is a choice. The Vilna Gaon's catalyst to Ahava. If you want to see this inside, the first time I saw this was in The River, the Kettle, the Boar, and the Bird by the now Rosh Yeshiva of Ner Yisrael, Rabbi Ahron Feldman. It's in the beginning of the book, from Shir HaShirim, from the Gaon. I'm only going to talk about 3 out of the 4. The 4th is how physical intimacy can be used to create lasting emotional intimacy, but it's not appropriate in a mixed audience. But let's at least try to quickly get through. We already did number 2. Let's quickly try to do 1 and 3. The first point is the following. We need to remind ourselves the Torah is a cognitive-based view of the human being, which means, as Reb Zelig Pliskin says, it's not an action that begets a reaction. It's my attitude to an action that begets a reaction. If I can change my attitude to the action, I can change my reaction to the action. Let me say that slowly. It's not an action that brings about a reaction. It's my attitude to the action that begets the reaction. If I can change my attitude to the action, I can change my reaction to the action. Can you imagine someone comes home and you say, how was your day today? And the person says, you know what? I was having a great day at the office. I saw Charlie and I just fell into a rage. Unexplainable. Mysterious. I fell into rage and I was yelling and screaming. I fell into a rage. You say, what are you, nuts? Something caused your emotional response. There was some inner statement that created your emotional response. So if that's true about anger, about jealousy, it's certainly going to be true about love, about ahava. We have been so brainwashed that we actually accept the word fall in love. I grew up in Brooklyn. What's fall? The hydro in Brooklyn is called Con Ed. We got the sewers. And when I was growing up, you worked underground. What's fall? You're looking up, you're walking, you don't see that the sewer cover has been taken off, and you fall. You fall. How can intelligent people use the verb when it comes to love, fall in love? And you know what? It's not just a joke. I remember the first time an incredibly intelligent person told me, I divorced my wife because I woke up one day and realized I had fallen out of love. Destructive. Destructive. But do you realize how empowering this is? If it's my attitudes, my inner statements that cause the way I feel, then just because I'm not feeling the love today, it's not a big deal. Throw out the vocabulary, I have fallen out of love. Throw it out. And especially because that statement is a crisis. I haven't fallen out of love. I just fell out of using the catalysts that bring me back to loving. Oh, that's not an emergency. Let me just get back to work. And that's what the Gaon teaches us. And the first one is so simple when you hear it. We love when we see virtue. We love when we see virtue. So here's the problem. We're not wired that way. You know, a couple of people came over to me and said, you know, we were at the village shul. It is gorgeous. Gorgeous building, it is. I can walk into the shul. You know what the one thing I'll always notice is the bulb that's out. I don't know what it is. We are wired to see the negative. That's how we're wired. Let's be honest with ourselves. When we meet someone for the first time, what do we more easily spot? The faults or the virtues? Why did Chazal give us Berchas HaShachar? Because they know how we wake up. Oh my gosh, this problem, that problem, stinks, it's this, who wants to get up? Chazal say, Pokeach Ivram, you can see. Moda'ani lefanecha, come on. Life is beautiful, today is beautiful. We're just wired to see the negative. So we have to put in the extra effort to train ourselves to see virtue. And here's the rule, IAC. IAC. Now, the first one, I should say identify and label. And let me tell you what I mean. You can identify a virtue or a behavior, but it's superficial. I'll give you an example. In the winter, I know my wife won't change the snow tires on her car, and I certainly know she is not going to fill up the windshield wiper fluid. So I do it for her. The tires is just once. That's all she gets. One change. I'm not going to change it. But the windshield wiper fluid throughout the winter. So she can say to herself, wow, what a nice guy. Puts in the windshield wiper fluid for me. But if she labels the virtue, what does that tell her? Is I will do anything to keep her safe. Identify and label the virtue. There might be one breadwinner in the family. If it's the male, he goes to work. Label the virtue. He has taken the responsibility for the security of our family, the security of my children. He cares about me. Identify and label. The second I is integrate it. You go into a fine restaurant. You wolf down the food. Or you eat it slowly. You savor it. Think about the virtue. Savor it until you feel the beauty of it. And then A, articulate it. And then C is commit to do this on an ongoing basis and commit to try to find new virtue. Can I tell you one of the great acts that I did in my husbanding career? Can I share this with you, please? Yeah. This was many, many years ago when we were still down on Wilson Avenue, or maybe it was still when I was up here in Thornhill. Someone came up with the idea, Valentine's Day in the secular world is like a big deal. So they say, you know what, why don't we do an evening in a fancy home, and everyone has to come dressed in tuxes and, and make like a real Valentine's Day, and Faggy and I will team teach about wisdom. Okay, we did it. It was really beautiful. It was on the bridal path. About 100 people came. It was really a nice scene. It was very nice. So I did the part about virtues. And what I said there is, if someone asks you about your spouse's virtues, you should be able to roll it off the tongue like that. Like that. So, we're driving home afterwards. My wife says, you know that thing you said about should roll off the tongue like that? And this was, I have never come close to that moment. I rolled it off the tongue. Thank you, ladies. But you know what it told me is I wasn't articulating it to her enough. See, because when we articulate it, then it concretizes our feelings. But more, when we articulate it to our spouse, it becomes hard for our spouse not to do it back to us. One very important side benefit is the focus on virtues is one of the great antidotes to anger. Anger, the cancer of a marriage. You see, what happens when we get angry? She's always late, she's always late, she's always late, she's always late, she's always late. She becomes lateness personified. She becomes the fault. He never knows what I want. 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 Ladies, time out here. We're men. We're men. We try. We can't read you without your telling us. Please, give us a break. We really do. We would love to. And we do try. But we can't always know what you're thinking. Tell us. No clapping. It's not a tennis match. It's not win or lose. It's an extraordinary marriage session. And the person becomes the fault. The person becomes the fault, and we blow up. But if I am focused on virtues, she's kind, she's loyal, she's giving, she cares about me, she takes care of it. And she also happens to be chronically late. Okay, it's a toothache, not something to blow up about. IAC. I just want to finish off with number 3. We love when we receive love. It's incredible how we take things for granted. So in Avos Hashem, Chovos Halvavos, you want to wake up your love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, see the gifts that He gives you. See the love that He shows you. See it in the details. We love when we receive love. There might be one primary cook in the house. Do we notice the dinner? What if it's the woman of the house? Why is she doing it? It's her obligation. No, it's not. Well, it's true. But still, it's an act of love based on that obligation. Identify it, double I. We can call it double IAC. Identify, integrate, articulate, and commit to keep doing it. But identify it in a detailed way. Thank you for the dinner. Wow, it's a Tuesday night. You're so busy. There were 4 different dishes here. Thank you. Thank you. See the acts of love. Identify it in a detailed way. Integrate it. Articulate it. And commit to constantly doing it. 3 areas that I believe is a fail-safe path for an extraordinary marriage. Number 1, commit to the obligations that we undertook under the chuppah, and maybe to go home and say to each other, new commitment, renewed commitment. But that'll only work if we drop the grudges. Another talk. Number 2, infuse deep meaning into your marriage and family. And number 3, realize that Ava, love, is a choice. Work on the catalysts of love. And Emetz Hashem, you will see a whole new, renewed energy and feelings and bonding. My bracha to all of us is that we merit to achieve an extraordinary marriage, because literally the future of Klal Yisrael, the future of the world, depends on what is happening in your home. Thank you very much.
A beautiful schus that on a day off, you get one day off in the middle of the week, and everyone finds the time to come and learn. It's a beautiful thing. We have to thank Canada for that also. But Canada should continue to be a safe haven and a wonderful place to have a Jewish community. I'd like to thank the BAYT Adult Education, Rabbi Goldman, and Rabbi Luss for making sure that this event runs beautifully. It's a pleasure to have with us today Rabbi Hoch. Rabbi Hoch is the Rav of the Village Shul, and he's also one of the founders of Asian Toronto. He moved out from the community some 15 years ago, and it's a pleasure to have him back to honor us on this important topic of marriage. I also want to just mention the Shiur Zecher Nishmas, David Ben Sada should be Ilah Nishmas. Thank you.